Prime Minister, will you ensure that I and millions of others can sleep soundly in our beds?
Prime Minister!
Mr. Speaker, I hesitate to do anything to disrupt the nocturnal arrangements of my honourable friend in any way, except to say that I think the whole country can sleep soundly in the knowledge that we are going to come out of the EU on October the 31st. We're going to get it done. We're going to deliver on the mandate of the people, and we're going to take this country forward in a way that I think it wants.
Peter Kyle.
Speaker, precisely which workers' rights does he want to enhance that presently we're prohibited to do from the EU?
Mr. Speaker, that will be a matter for this House, and he should welcome that opportunity. And if he is now saying that he does not wish to do anything to improve the rights of workers in this country, if he is saying that the entire corpus of EU law must remain whole and inviolate and untouched, and that is why the people of this country are fed up of remaining in the EU, want to be able to legislate for the advantage of the people of this country.
The model brevity from Hove must now be matched by Cheltenham. Mr. Alex Chalk.
His father is a great champion of the environment. Will he continue that noble family tradition?
Prime Minister!
Mr. Speaker, I certainly will. I want to congratulate my honourable friend from Cheltenham for everything he does also to promote the environment. And I think it is an amazing thing, the way, thanks to the work of colleagues on these benches, the environment, green issues are now seen to be the agenda that we Conservatives lead on. And we will continue to make improvements in our environment that will be of immense value to the people of this country.
Diana Berger!
The Prime Minister yesterday started the job that he always wanted. But what is he going to do to guarantee the millions of people across our country are not going to see their employment end because we are hurtling towards a no-deal Brexit which does not command the majority of this House?
Mr. Speaker, the answer is for this House of Commons to do what is sensible and right and deliver on the mandate of the people and get Brexit done by October the 31st. And that is the right thing to do.
Bima Falami!
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the Prime Minister's statement on increasing funding to education. Might he expand more on what we might do to help those with special needs, because they are of considerable need, not just in my constituency, but across the whole country?
Minister!
I thank my honourable friend, and he's entirely right, and he may have noticed that we have announced policies to allow special educational needs schools to be established, and in areas where local authorities need those SEND schools, and we will fund them.
Jonathan Reynolds.
Speaker, the new Prime Minister has just outlined a very significant spending programme. The new Chief Secretary of the Treasury has already committed to government debt falling every year, and we know a no-deal Brexit would be a significant cost to the national finances. Prime Minister, how are any of those three things compatible with each other?
Yeah. The answer is actually that the spending commitments so far are really rather modest, but they can be amply financed by the strength of the UK economy, which that party would jeopardise by their retrograde policies.
William Ragg.
Speaker, will schools be getting some of that welcome extra cash in this financial year or wait to the next?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it is my intention that they should get the extra cash as fast as can be humanly expedited.
James Frith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 80% of all children excluded from mainstream schools have special educational needs and disabilities. It's not enough to simply fund new specialist schools when actually what we need is mainstream education supporting special educational needs and disability. What's his plan for that? And it ain't just about cash.
And I thank the honourable gentleman. He is entirely right that all schools need funding for SEND, and that is part of the £4.6 billion programme that we have announced.
James Morris.
Would the Prime Minister agree with me that, notwithstanding his commitment to increasing capital funding on NHS to rebuild the NHS estate, that we should also focus on improving mental health care across our country, building on the work that myself and others around this House have done over the last 5 years to make sure that we deliver for those people too?
The honourable gentleman is entirely right, and I believe that one of the things we should do is to promote mental health in this country by giving businesses incentives to look after the mental health of their employees and prevent the burden from falling so heavily on the NHS and on social services.
Maria Eagle.
In his statement, he said he wants to govern for the whole of the country, but in a previous role, the right honourable gentleman has accused my constituents of wallowing in their victim status, repeated offensive and proven untruths about the cause of the Hillsborough disaster and called Liverpool self-pity city. So will he now apologise from that dispatch box to the people of Liverpool for the offence that he's caused?
Mr. Speaker, I ask the right honourable lady to look at my political record and look at what we've achieved, look at what I have done as a one-nation Conservative, as a lifting up, helping with policies that are uniformly delivering better outcomes for the poorest and neediest in society, and that is what I stand for, and that is what I believe in, and that is what this whole government is going to deliver.
Does my right honourable friend welcome the findings of the Alternative Arrangements Commission led by me and our right honourable friend, the member for Loughborough?
Prime Minister.
I do, and they are, if I may say, a withering retort to the gloomsters opposite, who say that there is no solution, who begin the prospect of negotiations by saying that defeat is inevitable. It is not true. As my right honourable friend has identified, the facilitations do exist, the remedies do exist. What it takes now is the political will to get there.
Stephen Kinnock.
Because the Conservative Party's manifesto 2017 says we need to deliver a smooth and orderly departure from the European Union, and that phrase is repeated 8 times in the document. Does the Prime Minister therefore agree with me that he has no mandate to deliver no deal?
The honourable gentleman will also, since he is a keen student of Conservative Party manifesto, know that the government was committed both then and since to prepare for a no-deal outcome. Not that we wanted. Not that we wanted. I'm grateful to my honourable friend who it reminds me from a sedentary position. The policy was that no deal was better than a bad deal. And we don't want it, but the way to avoid it is to prepare well for it.
Dr. Caroline Johnson.
Can I congratulate the Prime Minister and welcome him to his role? Mr. Speaker, 19% of my constituents do not still have access to 10 megabytes of broadband, affecting their business, educational and leisure opportunities. Can my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, commit to, as he has done during the campaign, to delivering broadband to every one of my constituents?
I thank my honourable friend, and of course she may have noticed that in the course of the recent election campaign I made it absolutely clear that we will accelerate, Mr. Speaker, the programme of full fibre broadband by 8 years, so that every household in this country gets full fibre broadband within the next 5 years.
Andrew Slaughter.
Speaker, will the Prime Minister order an inquiry into the £76 million wasted paying management consultants to work on the Shaping a Healthier Future programme for North West London, which the Health Secretary has now abandoned after 9 years?
Prime Minister.
I can certainly say that I think the Shaping a Healthier Future programme for North West London has not perhaps delivered the results that we wanted, but I think he and I share a constituency interest, shall we say, in ensuring that we get the improvements to healthcare in not just in North West London but across the country. And that is why this party and this government is spending an extra £20 billion in health. That's why I yesterday announced new upgrades for 20 hospitals across the country, and including some, I believe, in North West London.
Menzies.
And I welcome the Prime Minister to his role and also his commitment to infrastructure in the north of England. Can the Prime Minister commit to me that the Government will continue to invest in small projects across the north of England, such as the M55 Lytham St Anne's bypass?
I thank my honourable friend, and I lost count in the course of this recent campaign of the number of duelling schemes and bypasses that I seem to commit myself to. But I will certainly make sure that we invest massively in road, because although I believe passionately in mass transit, there is no doubt that for many people, investment in our roads, improving our roads, is absolutely essential for economic progress.
Marion Fellows.
The Prime Minister said some may accuse him of hyperbole. I don't. I accuse him of getting his facts wrong. The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, was elected by the Scottish Parliament in 2014, defeating Ruth Davidson by 51 votes. Will he apologise for getting it wrong?
Prime Minister.
Well, I was relying on the very, very clear advice of a very distinguished colleague of mine. I will undertake, Mr. Speaker, to write to the honourable lady with further and better particulars about the dispute that seems to have arisen between us about that point of fact.
Alex Shelbrooke.
Mr. Speaker, my right honourable friend I know to my core is a great One Nation Conservative, and in that spirit, I ask my right honourable friend, when his very busy schedule, can he find time to take a close look at my 6-year campaign to ban unpaid internships, which I'm sure he will agree will bring great meritocracy to this country?
Prime Minister.
I absolutely endorse the campaign that my honourable friend has run, and we should be a meritocracy, and people should be able to get access to jobs not according to who they know, but according to their talents, and he is entirely right in what he is.
Rachel Maskell.
Mr. Speaker, the Office of Prime Minister is accountable to this House, so detail is needed. Exactly what changes to the withdrawal agreement does he believe he can achieve?
I'm grateful to the honourable lady, and the answer I think was contained in my statement, which is that, and she will have heard it along with the House. What we need to do is, as a first step. Let me put it that way. As a first step to get rid of the backstop, which I remember, I listened to the debate, it was opposed by people on all sides of the House, and if our friends and partners will see their way round to doing that, I believe we'd be well on our way to solving the problems.
Jeremy Lefroy.
Speaker, will my right honourable friend support the establishment of a standalone UK investment and development bank, such as those which the Netherlands, Germany and France have, even though they're also members of the EIB, which are about to leave? And could we have one of the first investments being a giga-battery factory in the West Midlands?
Mr. Speaker, not only will I endorse that suggestion, but I will invite him to meet my right honourable friend the Chancellor at the earliest possible opportunity to discuss it.
Clive Efford.
Speaker, what does it say to the promises of restoring sovereignty to this House that the Prime Minister made when he was leading the Leave campaign, that he has appointed Dominic Cummings to be one of his major policy advisers? Was he right to defy the Select Committee and not attend?
Mr. Speaker, this government is appointing a fantastic team that will take this country forward, and I think that is absolutely astonishing. He talks of the campaign to leave the European Union. People on that side of the House voted to trigger Article 50. I think it is an utter disgrace. It is an utter disgrace that they are now trying to reverse that result.
Marcus James.
Mr. Speaker, I very much welcome our right honourable friend's programme for government. As he employs an additional 20,000 police officers, can he ensure that county areas like Warwickshire get their fair share?
Prime Minister.
And not only that, we must also do much more to ensure that police in rural areas get out to victims of crime in a timely and efficient way. And I know that my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, will be insisting on that as well.
Annalisa Dodds.
Mr. Speaker, if he actually cares about it, why did he devote only one sentence out of 61 sentences in a speech last night, and only 2 sentences out of 97 in a statement today to the climate emergency?
Absolutely. The Prime Minister.
I'm grateful to the honourable lady for parsing and counting the lines in my speech. I can tell her that I think by what I've said today, the House will know that we place the climate change at the agenda at the absolute core of what we are doing. And by the way, she will also, I think, acknowledge that it is this party, by committing to net zero by 2050, that is not only leading the country, but leading the world. And it is this party that believes in the private sector generated technology that will make that target attainable and deliver hundreds of thousands of jobs. That is the approach we shall follow.
With this new spirit of optimism on this side of the House, will my right honourable friend tell one of his ministers to organise a city status competition so at long last Southend-on-Sea can become a city?
The Prime Minister!
I think, Mr. Speaker, I have no alternative but to answer in the affirmative to that question.
Ian Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has repeated that this United Kingdom will leave the European Union by the 31st of October with or without a deal. So can I tell the House what range of figures he's working to as to the impact on GDP to any outcome?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, that is why it is absolutely vital that we prepare for a no-deal outcome, because after all, the more determined and the more careful our preparations, the less likely the risk of any disruptive or disorderly Brexit at all.
Tom Bursklev.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. His commitment to 20,000 new police officers is very welcome, as was the now Chancellor's commitment to a new policing covenant. We've managed to get back Boris over the line. When does he expect to complete the job on back Bobbies?
Prime Minister.
Thank my honourable friend. The answer is as soon as possible, certainly within the next 3 years.
Ms. Leslie.
The Prime Minister surely doesn't agree with the Home Secretary about the return of the death penalty, does he?
Prime Minister.
I have the fullest admiration for the Home Secretary's policies on law and order. I don't myself support the death penalty, but I think what the people of this country do want to see is proper sentencing for serious violent and sexual offenders, and they don't. And I'm glad to see some nodding from the Labour benches of it, because they know there are members opposite who know where their constituents truly are on some of these issues, and they're right, unlike the current leadership of this of the party opposite, and that is what we will do. But of course we will also be pursuing all the preventive measures necessary to reduce our prison population and to pursue a humane and liberal approach at the same time.
Alan Mack.
Mr. Speaker, I congratulate the Prime Minister on his election. Britain is establishing itself as a world leader in the new technologies of the fourth industrial revolution. Will my right honourable friend support our small business and start-ups that create the wealth that fund our public services?
He's done a lot of good work. I thank my honourable friend for all the good work he's done to promote investment in such start-ups, and I look forward to further conversations with him about ways we may encourage that investment.
Catherine West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister says he believes in the London living wage, and yet so many cleaners in Whitehall are still not paid it. Will he commit today, from the dispatch box, that every single entry-level worker and cleaner in Whitehall will be paid the living wage, regardless of whether they work for the Ministry of Justice, international development or any others?
Prime Minister.
I thank the honourable lady for that important point, and I have to say that yes, the answer is yes, and it is. I was very proud when I was running London that we massively actually expanded the living wage, and we made sure that it was paid not just by GLA bodies but by their contractors as well, and that is what we should be doing.
I remind colleagues of the one-sentence imperative. David Duckett.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and may I welcome my honourable friend to his post. And can I also welcome the comments made earlier about the SNP's policy on fishing to take us back into CFP. Can he also confirm that as we come out of the CFP, we become an independent coastal state and only negotiating on access to our waters on an annual basis?
My honourable friend is completely right, and may I congratulate him on the vision that he has for promoting Scottish fisheries and for using the opportunity of coming out of the EU to build that extraordinary industry, and he and I have discussed it, and I think we should be taking forward the plans that he suggests. And it is quite dismal to listen to the SNP, because, as I say, they would give back to Brussels control over our fisheries. What kind of a manifesto is that? I bet they U-turn on that before too long, Mr. Speaker.
Pete Wisher!
Why does the Prime Minister think he is so unpopular in Scotland? Just with him being Prime Minister, independence for Scotland rises to 53%. Is it all this Eton schoolboy bluster and buffoonery, or is it because he's prepared to take our nation out of the European Union against its will and a no-deal Brexit?
I think possibly the reason why I seem to get a good reception in Scotland, which I may say I did when I went to Aberdeen. I remember arriving, meeting some friends in Aberdeen Airport, and a very friendly reception throughout. It may be because the people of Scotland recognise that they have a commonsensical conservative approach, which would not hand back control of their fisheries to Brussels, just as Scotland has regained control of its fantastic fish.
Charles Watley,
Mr. Speaker. I thank my right honourable friend for bringing some sunshine into this place, and I would invite him to come to the sunshine coast of Clacton if he can put up with the 1 hour 40-minute journey that it takes to cross the 69 miles. Will his government please focus on infrastructure to places like ours, which are so often overlooked?
I thank you for the plea he has put in, and he has added the line to Clacton to the long list of infrastructure projects that I propose now to expedite. But he is quite right, because our programme is to use infrastructure, education and technology. Infrastructure, education and technology to level up across the country, and that's what we're going to do.
Luke Pollard.
Will the Prime Minister join me in opposing the early release of Vanessa George, the serial paedophile who abused babies and toddlers in Plymouth, especially as she still refuses to show remorse by naming which one of those babies she abused, filmed and circulated images of?
I understand why the honourable gentleman was nodding to my answer earlier on, and of course it would be wrong of me to intervene in particular cases, but I think he and I are one in agreeing that people should serve appropriate sentences for serious crimes.
Ross Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I know that my right honourable friend, from his head to his toes, is a committed and passionate unionist. Yeah. Therefore, does he agree with me that as we leave the European Union on the 31st of October as one UK, and as powers come back to this country from Brussels, we can strengthen the bonds of our four nations?
I think my honourable friend makes a powerful case, and I think that when we come out of the EU as a United Kingdom, whole and entire and perfect, the SNP will find that their guns are spiked and the wind has been taken out of their sails, and their sole manifesto commitment is a bizarre pledge to restore the control of Scotland's fish to Brussels. That's what they stand for, that's their programme, and I'm waiting for the U-turn.
Dr. Ruback.
London Mayor, the Prime Minister courted popularity with pledging an amnesty for illegal immigrants and his vocal opposition to Heathrow expansion. So now he's in a position to do something about these two. Is he a man of his word?
Prime Minister.
As the honourable lady will know very well, I've answered the question on Heathrow. I remain deeply concerned about the abilities of the promoters of the third runway to meet their obligations on air quality and noise pollution, and I will follow the court cases with a lively interest. And as for the amnesty on illegal immigrants, it is absolutely true that I have raised it several times since I was in government, and I must say didn't receive an overwhelming endorsement from the previous Prime Minister when I put it when I raised it once in cabinet. But I have to say I do think that our arrangements in theoretically being committed to the expulsion of perhaps 500,000 people who don't have the correct papers and who may have been living and working here for many, many years without being involved in any criminal activity at all, I think that legal position is anomalous. And we saw the difficulties that that kind of problem occasioned in the Windrush fiasco. We know the difficulties that can be caused, and I do think, yes, I'll answer her directly, I do think we need to look at our arrangements for people who have lived and worked here for a long time, unable to enter the economy, unable to participate properly or pay taxes, without documents. We should look at it, and we should. The truth is that the law is already basically allows them an effective amnesty. That's basically where things have settled down. But we should look at the economic advantages and disadvantages of going ahead with the policy that she describes, and which I think she and I share.
Chris Phil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Prime Minister share Margaret Thatcher's belief in home ownership? And will his government do everything it can, including perhaps implementing some of the stamp duty reforms I suggested last week, to promote the home ownership dream?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for everything he's done to promote home ownership, for the stamp duty reforms, and myself, I believe that in this fantastic capital city of Europe and of the world, I think stamp duty is choking the market at the moment. We do need to think about the way it's working, and to see what we can do to free it up and to give more people the chance of home ownership.
Joanna Cherry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2012, when a majority of the members of the Scottish Parliament wanted to hold an independence referendum, his predecessor and friend David Cameron agreed the means to do so. Now that the same mandate exists, is he brave enough to do the same, or is he afraid he'll be the last Prime Minister of the United Kingdom?
I think that the former Prime Minister, distinguished former Prime Minister, committed, and it was universally agreed that the event in 2014 was a once-in-a-generation referendum, and that's the way it should be.
Maria Miller.
My right honourable friend will know that under the Conservatives we've got record numbers of women in work in this country. And if we're going to be successful post-Brexit, we've got to make sure we continue that. Will my right honourable friend join me to help those 50,000 women a year who feel that they've got no option but to leave their jobs because of pregnancy discrimination? Will he help me enforce the law so that we can have more of those women being productive members of society?
And I thank my right honourable friend for everything she has done to promote working women and equalities of all kinds, and I will certainly look at what we can do to alleviate the difficulties that pregnant women in particular face, and we'll get on with that.
Tom Bray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Crashing out with no deal would be an unacceptable outcome, damaging to our economy, undermine our future prosperity. Those are the views of three ministers who are now in his government. Does he accept that there is no mandate for no deal, and that if he proceeds with no deal, it will be against the will of this House, the will of the people, and indeed he will be solely responsible for the chaos that will ensue?
Well, I wonder how many referendums we would have to have before the Liberal Democrats actually respected the result.
Clean. Rachel.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've been here quite a while now, and the Prime Minister definitely hasn't reached his quota of 20 for hospital upgrades. So does he agree with me that the Alex in Redditch and the Worcestershire Acute must be number 1 and number 2?
I thank my honourable friend for that very cunningly posed question. And I think she may be fortunate, because I'm given to understand that the hospital in question serves the Chancellor's constituency as well.
Diana Johnson.
I know in government you have to make tough investment decisions, so I want to know from the Prime Minister, what's his priority? Crossrail for the north, fully electrified from Hull to Liverpool, or Crossrail 2 for London?
Prime Minister.
I refuse to. It's like asking a tigress to choose between her cubs, Mr. Speaker. I refuse to choose.
Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister commit to fight on behalf of persecuted Christians worldwide following the release of the recent Truro report?
Mr. Speaker, I certainly will. I thank you for his question.
The Prime Minister's carelessness and lack of attention to detail aided and abetted the Iranian regime in locking up a British citizen. Can I ask the Prime Minister now to put right what he did so wrong and take personal responsibility for ensuring the release of Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe?
Prime Minister. I want to say, of course, that we work very hard to secure the release of Nazanin and all the dual nationals who are held, in my view, unfairly and illegally by the Iranian regime. It is time that an innocent woman was now released.
Robert Alford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Harlow, we are optimistic too that you're going to cut the cost of living for working people and invest in skills and apprenticeships, but we're particularly optimistic because yesterday you said we are going to have 20 new hospital upgrades. Can we be optimistic and make sure we get the new hospital in Harlow that we desperately need?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think I better be careful here because we will be upgrading 20 new hospital upgrades will be upgraded, and details of the programme will be announced forthwith.
Martin Doxey-Hughes.
I'm very grateful, Mr. Speaker. Incarcerated now for over 600 days with accusations of torture against the Indian state, Jagtar Singh Johal has now seen 2 Prime Ministers, 3 Foreign Secretaries and 4 Under-Secretaries, 1 suspended from their position. Therefore, can the Prime Minister assure my constituent, a UK national, that his government and their trade deals with the Indian state have his name at the top of the agenda, and that he seeks a meeting with the Foreign Secretary and myself with the Singh Johal family at the soonest opportunity?
I know that the Foreign Secretary will be taking up the case of Jagtar Singh Johal assiduously, as all previous Foreign Secretaries have done.
Raymond Chishti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I very much welcome the Prime Minister to his place and welcome his commitment to making religious freedom a key priority. With that being the case, and the campaign he supported on the backbenches on Asha Bibi, can you say, subject to Bishop Truro's report, cases like that will now be looked at differently by the United Kingdom?
I thank my honourable friend for the campaign he has managed for Asia Bibi and indeed others, and I think it's very important that our country should send out a very clear signal that we will provide a beacon for people facing such distress and such persecution.
Kate Green.
Further to the Prime Minister's answer to my honourable friend, the member for Ealing Central and Acton, will he also now commit his government to lifting the ban on asylum seekers working if the state takes more than 6 months to resolve their case?
Prime Minister.
The Home Office is currently reviewing that matter, and we will be making an announcement shortly.
Andrew Lewer.
I was delighted that the Prime Minister, at the very earliest opportunity, spoke about adult care and changes are needed there. Can I commend to him particularly the Joint Select Committee report, which I took part in, which talks about insurance-type solutions as well as hypothecated taxes.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and I don't want to prejudge the outcome of what we're going to do, but we will be putting forward, Mr. Speaker, a detailed plan for how to deal with social care, and I hope it may attract cross-party support.
Thank you. Dr. Lisa Cameron.
Many thanks, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister look closely at reversing UK Government plans to close East Kilbride's Centre 1 tax office, causing the loss of thousands of jobs in my constituency, and be true to his word today that no town is ever again left behind?
Thank you, Ms. B. I will make sure that the Chancellor writes to her about that matter at the earliest opportunity.
Helen Goodman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Single mums often come to my constituency when non-resident parents don't fulfil their duties. What's the Prime Minister's plan for tackling this problem?
We must work with our partners around the world to make sure that non-resident parents do fulfil their duties, and there are conventions, as the Honourable Lady knows, to insist on that.
Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to begin by thanking the new Prime Minister for all the good work that he is doing to make the case for Scottish independence. But for how long does the Prime Minister think he can honestly set his face against the right of the sovereign people of Scotland to decide their own future?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as far as I can remember, in 2014 the people of Scotland did have a referendum, and her side did not prevail. And the people of Scotland voted to remain part of the United Kingdom, from which there are many, many benefits. Many benefits, economic, political and geostrategic, and that is a great future for the people of Scotland, and one that I think will prevail.
David Hanson.
In order to inform the debate, could the Prime Minister tell the House what the level of tariffs are under World Trade Organization rules for sheep, for planes and cars, which are the key industries in my constituency, which will be damaged by a no-deal Brexit?
Well, as the honourable gentleman knows full well, our intention is to make sure that there are no tariffs imposed and that we leave with a zero tariff, zero quota outcome, which I'm sure he'd support.
John Woodcock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There was no mention of defence in his statement, still less of nuclear deterrence. So does he recognise that we are in a race against time to build the new dreadnought class of submarines to maintain continuous at-sea deterrence? And will he throw the whole weight of government behind that vital task?
I thank the honourable gentleman. I admire his commitment to a vital national asset that is, of course, made in his constituency, and I draw attention only to the real risk that is posed not just to the economy, but to the security of our country, if it should ever be governed by the party that he has rightly left.
One sentence of fewer than 30 words. Jack Dromey.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday 50 representatives of 2 million workers in manufacturing came to Parliament to detail their grave and growing concerns over the threat of a no-deal Brexit. They asked if the Prime Minister would meet with them so that the Prime Minister could hear first-hand just how serious that would be for them. Will the Prime Minister agree to do that?
I'm grateful, and I thank him for what he's doing to work with the manufacturing industry, and I give him my absolute assurance that we will do everything we can to protect just-in-time supply chains. And my right honourable friend, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, as he may know, is now in charge of making those preparations. I'm sure he'll be only too happy to meet him and the representatives that he describes.
Matt Weston.
Speaker, the Prime Minister famously said F business in the context of Brexit. Does he not accept that communities such as mine depend on manufacturing such as JLR? By logical extension, does he mean F my community?
I think that people around this country will have heard me mention the JLR investment in Birmingham. I think 3 times already this morning. This afternoon, and it is a measure of the success of this country that it continues to attract such fantastic investments from JLR and indeed other car companies, and that is because we have cut corporation tax, whereas that party would put up corporation tax to the highest levels in Europe. That is the risk posed to JLR and many other businesses around the world.
Patrick Grady.
Speaker, of course, the United Kingdom that people in Scotland voted for in 2014 as a result of his Brexit obsession no longer exists. So can he confirm that he is both familiar with and supportive of the principles of the Claim of Right for Scotland?
Mr. Speaker, I refer the honourable gentleman the answer I gave several times already, which is the people of Scotland had a vote in 2014. They voted overwhelmingly to remain in the Union. They're absolutely right, and I see no reason to dissent from that view.
Alex Sibel.
Speaker, the Prime Minister mentioned aviation. In Norway, they have an aviation emissions plan, including making all short-haul flights electric by 2040, including R&D to achieve that. Does he have that scale of ambition?
He will have noticed that in my opening statement, I mentioned electric planes.
Yes. Ian Paisley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In order to make the United Kingdom the home of electric vehicles, the Prime Minister will know that he will need to protect the intellectual property of those making those electric vehicles. Will he therefore step in and save the company Wrightbus that he is very familiar with and is receiving significant economic hardship at the present time? Will he make that a priority?
Well, I may say it was one of the great pities, in my view, that the current mayor of London, not a patch on the old guy, decided to cancel a contract with Wrightbus of Ballymena, which was of great value to the people of this country, and I think it's a great company, and we will make sure, I can give the honourable my assurance, we will do everything we can to ensure the future of that great UK company.
Neil Zeichner.
Optimism is one thing, but pantomime is quite another. And what is like to be the hottest day on record it is astonishing that the Prime Minister seeks to outsource tackling climate change to the private sector. So can you tell us one thing his government's going to do in the next month to tackle the climate emergency?
Sorry, I'll tell you one thing that we are doing. We have secured for this country the COP26 for the UK. We will be hosting the World Climate Change Conference here in the UK, and leading the world, once again showing the world what UK technology, what UK technological optimism can achieve.
Tommy Shepherd.
Mr. Speaker, we know the Prime Minister is opposed to a second Scottish referendum. That is not my question. My question is, if the people who actually live in Scotland elect a Parliament in Edinburgh, and if by majority that Parliament votes to consult people on their constitutional future, will he respect that decision, yes or no?
I think, Mr. Speaker, it was common ground across all parties, including the Scottish Nationalists, at the referendum, that it was a once-in-a-generation decision that was taken in 2014, and that was the right answer.
Mohamed Yassin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the Prime Minister's commitment to investment in the frontline healthcare. Bedford Hospital urgently needs funds in order to expand and meet the needs of our growing population. Will he give our hospital the money it needs?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We will, of course, make sure that the 20 billion extra that we have committed to the NHS goes to the front line, and we'll make sure that it goes to all hospitals in this country.
Gavin Shuker.
The central policy of his government now is to deliver Brexit in October, including through doing so without a deal, and as such it is unclear as to whether or not he commands a majority in this House. Will he now do what the Leader of the Opposition will not do, prove his own political virility, and table a vote of confidence for us to vote on when we return?
The House of Commons has voted several times to honour the mandate of the people. It is the law of this country that we leave the European Union on October the 31st, and that, I think, is what democracy requires and what we will do.
Long-suffering,
Alan Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Despite his unionist bluster, he cannot deny his anti-Scottish sentiments which are on the record books. As a gesture going forward, will he at least find the money to repay the £160 million EU convergence uplift that was stolen from Scottish farmers by Westminster?
He will have seen, actually, that I have pledged to restore the money to Scottish farming if he'd been paying the slightest attention, and it is thanks to Conservatives in Scotland that we have done that.
Justin Madders.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In his statement, the Prime Minister said he wanted to close the opportunity gap, but 2/3 of his cabinet were privately educated, which is more than double the composition of his predecessor's first cabinet. He's not leading by example, is he?
Mr. Speaker, I think what the people of this country want to know is what is the programme of this government to take this country forward. And I think the contrast is between a Conservative Party that is the party of the people, who wants to improve healthcare, that wants to invest in public services, and this party that would destroy the UK economy and ruin the livelihoods of everybody.
Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister says he wants to leave no town behind and unleash this nation's productive potential. If that's not just empty rhetoric, will the Prime Minister commit to saving the Kintycally Railway Works in my constituency, Springburn, due to close tomorrow? I want to have that constituency railway works reopened as quickly as possible. The Prime Minister form a task force across government to save it as quickly as possible.
As the Honourable Gentleman knows, business support is devolved in Scotland, and he should look to the government of Scotland, the incompetent government of Scotland, for his first port of call.
Oh, what an invidious choice. Mr. Peter Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The very limited guarantees contained in the EU Citizen Settled Status Scheme come nowhere near the promises the Prime Minister has previously made. that no EU national will be any less favourably treated after we leave the EU. So will he now guarantee, as well as the settled status scheme, will he guarantee the rights to healthcare, the pension rights, the rights to leave and return, the rights to bring the family over, the rights to vote, and all of the other rights currently enjoyed by citizens of the EU? Or does he need to get permission from his Chancellor, the Exchequer, before he answers that question?
Those assurances, those guarantees, as he knows, we are giving unilaterally in a supererogatory way. And, of course, I want to see them, as my honourable friend has suggested, I want to see a symmetrical response from the other side of the Channel, but I think we should be very proud of the steps we're taking.
Stephen Gittins.
Mr. Speaker, this session has underlined what my constituents believe, that the Prime Minister doesn't have a clue what he's doing. So will he tell us how he responded to the Fife packaging company who had to write to him to tell him that the Kipper Packaging's rules are made in Westminster and have got nothing to do with the EU?
I think it really is extraordinary that the Scottish Nationalist Party is returning to the issue of fish, Mr. Speaker, when it is now clear that their whole policy is not just to join the euro, not just to submit to the whole panoply of EU regulations, but to hand over control of Scottish fisheries, Arbroath, Smokies, Kippers and all to the EU. That's their policy, and I would like to see them try and get elected on it.
Order. I thank the Prime Minister most warmly on this, his debut outing at the dispatch box, for his answers and for his patience and courtesy, and for responding to, in view of the chuntering from a secretary position by way of heckle, for responding to 129 inquisitors. Before we proceed with the next business, thank you, Prime Minister. Let me just say this. Yes, I'll come to points of order, of course. Following the appointment of the Right Honourable Lady, the member for Loughborough, to the Cabinet, I am expecting there to be a vacancy for the chair of the Treasury Select Committee, a matter to which, if memory serves me correctly, the Honourable Gentleman, the member for Wickham, referred much earlier in our proceedings. I shall announce the arrangements for the election to this post alongside any further Select Committee chair elections that may arise when the House returns in September. I hope that it will be possible to hold the election or elections in the second week of the September sitting. I hope that that is helpful to colleagues who take a proper interest in the scrutiny function of our select committees. Yes, indeed. I will come to... I want to save him up. I don't want to squander the honourable gentleman at too early a stage in our proceedings. So we'll keep him on ice. And we'll come first to the point of order from Jenny Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would be grateful for your advice. If we exit the EU without a deal, we can no longer export millions of lambs slaughtered in the UK.